Welcome back to the cryptowrld channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and this Bitcoin chart shows a massive Bitcoin move is coming sometime soon, as the amount of Bitcoin sitting on exchanges is still rapidly declining, with another $1 billion leaving exchanges over the past 2 days. And of course, later in this video, I'll be talking about the stock market and the recent interest rate hike by the Federal Reserve. So definitely make sure you're sticking around all the way to the end of the video so that you don't miss out on any of that important information. But first, let's take a quick look at the 12-hour Bitcoin chart, and both the RSI and the MACD are technically pointing in the bullish direction. But if you're looking in the histogram within the MACD indicator, we're still not seeing a lot of bullish momentum kicking in. And of course, the 12-hour Bitcoin parabolic stop and reverse indicator is still technically sitting in the red until we break above this dot, coming in at around 41,500. But this parabolic stop and reverse indicator becomes more accurate once we have some more momentum in the market, talking about these larger swings. And when you're zooming out to the daily Bitcoin chart, one of the reasons why we're not seeing a lot of momentum in the shorter term is because the price oscillators, specifically the RSI and the MACD, are in these symmetrical triangle patterns. So basically they're converging in to a tightening range. And as this process is happening, we are seeing less and less momentum on all of these shorter term swings until we eventually either break support or resistance in these price oscillators. And if you're looking at whereabouts these price oscillators are sitting within their symmetrical triangle patterns, we are getting very close towards the end of these triangles, which means the next significant move in the Bitcoin price is probably not too far away. But when we eventually see either a break to the upside or a break to the downside in these price oscillators, we also of course need to see the same thing in the price action. And this level of support is coming in at around 38,000, and this level of resistance is coming in at around 45 to 46,000. And so obviously if we break support, the bears will be back in control and we might even have a significant move to the downside. But if we break above that 45 to $46,000 level, then the bulls are back in control and we'll probably have a significant move back to the upside. And speaking about levels of support and resistance here on the daily time frame, looking in the VPVR indicator, we've got this massive range of support, which is really starting at around 40,000 approximately and going down towards around 37,000 before it really starts dropping off down to these other levels like 35,000. But then if you're looking at our next major cluster of resistance, that is starting at around 45,000, and the biggest cluster of resistance is at around 48,000, and this entire cluster of resistance is going all the way up towards around 50,000. So these are still the significant levels that I am paying attention to on the Bitcoin chart. And if you're looking at the total amount of Bitcoin sitting on exchanges, right now it is absolutely falling off a cliff. And if you're looking at around a week ago, we saw one single day where we had about $1.4 billion worth of Bitcoin getting moved off exchanges in just one day. And just over the past 2 days alone, we've seen another 24,000 Bitcoin leave exchanges, which is equivalent to around $1 billion US. And in case you don't already know, when Bitcoin gets moved off exchanges, that is essentially taking away from the available supply of Bitcoin, making the available supply of Bitcoin more scarce, which is technically a bullish signal. And you can see that I just zoomed out a little bit further on this chart to see the last couple times where we saw a drop off in the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges, somewhat similar to the drop off that we're seeing recently. And the last time we saw something just like this happen was back in the September correction. And after we saw that massive drop off in the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges, it was only another 2 weeks approximately before we saw a massive pump in the Bitcoin price, taking us from around 40,000 US dollars to well above 60,000 US dollars, pumping into a brand new all-time high within about 1 month after seeing that massive drop off in the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges. And the time before that was back in late July last year, where we saw another significant increase first and then decrease in the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges. And first of all, if you're looking at the increase, that came just before Bitcoin bottomed out, and then having the massive decrease in Bitcoin on exchanges, that was also a bullish signal, because while that was happening, the Bitcoin price pumped from below 40,000 up towards around 53,000 within about 1 month from the initial drop off on exchanges. But if you zoom out even further on this chart, looking at the last 2 years worth of history, the drop off that we're seeing recently still doesn't really compare to the drop off that we saw during 2020. And obviously after we saw that massive drop off in the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges, the Bitcoin price ran from around 10,000 to well above 60,000. So generally speaking, the more Bitcoin that is moving off exchanges, the more bullish that is. And then if a lot of Bitcoin moves back onto exchanges, usually that is a bearish signal, like what we saw at the beginning of May 2021, just before the May crash. And if you're looking at the Bollinger Bands indicator on the 3-day Bitcoin chart, right now this indicator is squeezing together, which usually happens after a price consolidation when another massive move is just around the corner. Some examples of this happening was back in July 2020, also back in around October 2020, and then we saw this happen again during July 2021, and also a slight squeeze during September 2021. And also, if you're looking back in May 2021, we saw a squeeze in these Bollinger Bands just before a volatile move to the downside, and we saw a similar thing in late November last year. We saw a slight squeeze in these Bollinger Bands just before seeing a significant move in the market. So basically, all of this sideways price action that we have been experiencing really is just the calm before the storm, and that is why we must be focusing on our levels of support and resistance, because the moment we start breaking one of those levels, that is how you know we're potentially beginning that next massive move in the market. Now, just quickly talking about the Federal Reserve's interest rate hike that happened yesterday, and of course, for those of you that follow me over on my Twitter, which by the way is linked down below in the description, you would know that I sent out an update as soon as the news broke, and of course, the news was a 25 basis point interest rate hike, which was expected. And just while we're here, I'll mention that I've been posting some other altcoin opportunities over on my Twitter, so if you don't already follow me over there, definitely make sure you're doing that. And once again, the link is down below in the description and in the pinned comment. So this 25 basis point hike, of course, raised the Fed funds rate by 0.25% from 0.25% to 0.5%. And if you're looking at this chart right here, which shows the last 10 years of history, this is actually the first rate hike that we have seen since all the way back here, back in 2018. And now, technically speaking, when interest rates rise, that basically slows down the economy because it means debt becomes more expensive, which reduces spending, which lowers revenue for businesses, which leads to higher unemployment. And then that circles back around to reduced spending all over again. And in a more severe scenario, that can actually cause a recession, which is certainly not a good thing for the majority of asset prices. But the reason why markets did not crash yesterday, even though the Fed raised interest rates, is because we already knew this interest rate hike was going to happen. In fact, we've known it since around December. So the markets have actually had a few months to price this in, which is actually one reason why we have seen a few months worth of bearish price action. A lot of that would have been caused by the markets simply pricing in these interest rate hikes. And of course, we already know that more interest rate hikes are coming this year. So the markets have already priced this in. And because we officially got this announcement, which basically means we have reduced some of the short-term uncertainty in the market. Anytime you are reducing uncertainty from the market, that is a bullish signal, at least in the shorter term. And of course, we saw exactly that play out over in the stock market. This right here is the S&P 500 index on the daily time frame. And yesterday turned out to be a very green day. And today so far is also another green day, at least at the time of recording this video. But what is great to see is if you're looking in the daily RSI for the S&P 500 index, this has officially broken out to the upside. We have already seen one daily candle close, which is now cementing the RSI in place. And apart from seeing this massive bullish divergence over the past 1 to 2 months, this breakout in the daily RSI is the first major bullish signal that we have seen since all-time highs. And because the market has already priced in the rate hikes, we already know what the rate hikes are going to be for this year. It is no surprise why the stock market is experiencing a nice bounce after being oversold for some time. And in case you are new to this channel, the stock market is also a pretty good indicator for Bitcoin, which basically means if we see a lot of bearish price action over in the stock market, there's probably a good chance we're going to see a similar thing over in the Bitcoin price. But if we see a major recovery happen in the stock market, then that would be very bullish for Bitcoin and help Bitcoin in its recovery. But anyway, if you found this video useful or simply enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like down below. And if you're new to the channel, you might as well subscribe with notifications turned on for more updates just like this every single day. And if you want to make more money in crypto, whether or not prices are going up or down, these two videos popping up right here are definitely for you because they can help you make that happen. But anyway, that is it for this update. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.